Welcome back to Edgework, presented by FanDuel as part of the Hammer Betting Network. I'm Alex Moretto, joined here today by Rob Pizzola and So Money Sports for our full NHL playoff preview, I should say. A full breakdown of all the first round series, the Eastern Conference, Western Conference futures, Stanley Cup futures, Conn Smythe, all that sort of stuff. And we're actually starting on time today, which is a refreshing change of pace. This is a beautiful, beautiful time of year as the playoffs kick into high gear. Are you guys excited or what?
Got my Leafs swag on. I got my Leafs mug going here as well. For at least the next 2 weeks, I know I can be excited about playoff hockey. Honestly, though, this is one of my favorite times of the year, not just as like a Leafs fan or whatever. I think the first round of the NHL playoffs is some of the best action you can have in sports. There's just a lot of chaos, a lot of tight, low-scoring games, stuff like that. So
unless you're Hitman.
Unless you're Hitman, where you just you don't even rank the NHL playoffs anywhere. Yeah. But he doesn't play hockey, or didn't grow up playing hockey, doesn't get it. I'm ready to go, boys. I'm stoked. I'm excited.
So money, no Canucks, but it doesn't matter. You have about 8 other teams that you're cheering on that all made it to the playoffs. So I think you're well covered here, right?
Yeah. I don't have the Canucks to cloud my head anymore, but you will notice I have quite a range of teams at various different prices that I'll be cheering for, and maybe the Leafs are one of them. Who knows?
Maybe. Oh, Godspeed. Good luck to you if that's the case. We have a lot to get to, so I do want to get into the series very, very quickly. Though I do want to recap. Yesterday we did go 3-0 on the show, and that takes us to over the final month of the season. Over the past 30 days, that takes us to a 12.4% ROI, 62.50 and 2 record, 14.69 units. Nice little number there.
What changed over the last month?
Yeah, I'm wondering what happened in the last month of the year that would have caused this upswing.
Pretty much went right back to the day Albert left, and looked at our show record, and it suddenly just shot through the roof. I'm not exactly sure how that happened. Really, really big mystery over here, but
this is a real documented record,
Yes.
Unlike Matt Zilbert's fake documented record, which
we're not changing sports books. We're not doing any. I don't know. I'm not even paying attention to that.
You guys aren't buying pucks. We're not buying pucks in hockey.
Yeah. We're still not as elite on Wednesdays, but every other day I think we got them beat, so that's good. We do have 8 series to get to. We got Conn Smythe odds, we have futures, all that sort of stuff. So I do want to get into all of that. Before we do, the NHL playoffs are about to begin, and the Battle of Ontario is on. FanDuel is your home for live betting the Battle of Ontario and other playoff series with new features like live SGPs, build a parlay, any game, any period, or stack multiple matchups onto one slip with same game parlay plus. And what's better than playoff hockey? Overtime playoff hockey. Get more from the game with live overtime markets. Right now, new customers can kick off the season with $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Just place any $5 bet, and you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Download FanDuel today and get more with North America's #1 sportsbook. Please play responsibly. Must be 21 plus and present in select states, or 18 plus and present in DC, or 19 plus and physically located in Ontario. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-866-531-2600 or visit connexontario.ca. Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut or visit mvgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Got some marbles in my mouth today here as everyone's home. Good Friday. It's chaos over here. I'm going to be firing on those live overtime markets. I'll tell you that much right now. Live overtime goal score stuff, that's all the temptation I need. I will be absolutely firing on those markets. So that'll be a lot of fun. All right. I'm going to go in chronological order of when these series actually start, if you guys are good with that, which means we will start off in the Western Conference, where the Winnipeg Jets are taking on the St. Louis Blues, hoping to avoid another first round early exit here. Jets minus 225 to win the series on FanDuel. Blues plus 184. So money. I will start with you here. You did have some Blues to make the playoffs. Tickets ended up cashing here. Are you going to keep riding this Blues team, or you think finally the Jets will break through?
So as we often do, sometimes we ride teams and we continue riding them, and other times we do a full 180 and we just drop them. I'm dropping the Blues. This was a series. If you asked me a couple of weeks ago, it was a situation where I would have felt that the Blues might be able to give the Jets a run. I still think it's possible, but I think that with everything that's gone on in the last 2 years with the Jets, with their first round exits, going into the season, everything coming out of the camp, this is what they've been looking forward to. There's an element of redemption here on this Jets team. That's all they've been talking about all year, right? Like if you go back and like from the beginning of the year, this is what they've been gearing up for. Now, I expect a very good Jets team in this playoff, and it's unfortunate for the Blues because I think in other matchups, I think the Blues might have been better, but in this one where the Jets will have the discipline to shut down the Blues, I don't think the Blues can hurt them where you need to hurt the Jets. And specifically, that's clogging up the neutral zone, that is getting in front of the net, that's dirtying up the game. The Blues try, and there's an element of that in their game, but I don't think that it's enough against the Jets. And there's something to be said about the Jets going forward in the playoffs, but for this series, in this matchup, I think that the Jets are gonna win this series.
Rob, you share those same sentiments. I see you nodding along.
Yeah, I mean, I've been talking about the Blues for a while now, and I don't think strongly of them. Like, they reached the playoffs largely by outperforming their underlying metrics. They were consistently outshot at 5-on-5. They were outchanced at 5-on-5. They relied heavily on, like, elite finishing. And, I mean, Jordan Binnington had a good run down the stretch as well to win their games. But to me, Winnipeg is a way more complete team. I'm a little bit concerned about Ehlers not being there for the first round. They lose a great depth player, someone I've always been a fan of. He's small. He's maybe not like your prototypical playoff type of performer, but it hurts the depth of the lineup overall. And that's the only reason I didn't bet the Jets in this series. My fair is like minus 220. It would be a little bit higher if Ehlers was in the lineup. But ultimately, Winnipeg's a very strong defensive team. A huge part of that came from their defensive structure, but also they have the best goalie in the world behind them as well. And I look at the series, they have advantages in depth, defensive play, goaltending. I think St. Louis's only real path to success here is Binnington just gets really hot and steals a series. And that could happen, but I would much rather, bet that in a price range that's way higher than this. Like, to me, these are two teams that are on complete opposite ends of the spectrum right now. So I think Winnipeg will probably win this series comfortably, unless Binnington just puts in an unreal performance.
Yeah. Ehlers' injury obviously hurts a little bit, as we talked about, but like getting Gabe Vilardi back, who's been out for close to a month, is also a massive addition because he's been huge for them in that top six. I think a better player than Ehlers to begin with. So like getting him back and healthy here is going to be massive. For me, the Blues they're just not the team to threaten the Jets. Like, they just don't have the depth up front. They don't have enough goals in the team, in my opinion. They're very reliant on one line, that Neighbors or Kyrou Thomas and Buchnevich line, to kind of generate all their offense. I think that's where the Holloway injury really hurts them.
Yeah.
Because now you go to line two, and then like Neighbors is a good player, but he's not quite there yet. He hasn't reached that next level like he maybe will one day. Shen's offense has fallen off significantly. Snuggerud he's just so raw. Like, maybe one day will be a good player, but he's just very raw. And then the bottom six is just a mix, it's a jumble of guys who are basically, kind of replaceable in and out of the lineup. So I just don't think there's enough offense here for them. I think there's a pathway to this series being over very quickly, honestly. A very focused Winnipeg team that knows what's coming for them next, regardless of who wins between the Avs and Stars. I think they're going to be a very focused group. I think they can get this done very quickly. A Blues team that people are like talking about how this is shades of 2019 when they went on this heater and made the playoffs and then went for that run. This is a very, very different team. They do not have the same makeup at all. I know Binnington is still there. That is about all that is consistent at this point, because this roster looks very different. The construction is very different. They just rode a PDO heater for a couple months to get them into the playoffs, and that's basically all it was. I think they're going to be in for a little bit of a rude awakening here. I don't mind some like Winnipeg series, like -1.5 stuff, -2.5 stuff here. I think there is a path to this being over quickly.
I will say go ahead, so many.
No, I was just gonna say that that Blues team that went to the Cup, that was a very heavy team. That was able to slow down the game quite a bit, and that's why they had that success they did in the Boston series. So that's not the same team in terms of roster composition.
Yeah, I think Winnipeg has the potential to have a deep run in them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, who knows? Like the Jets have notoriously been a playoff choker, but that's usually like they've had to step up in class in previous years in the first round, where this is a huge step down in class. But like you look at the Conn Smythe, and Connor Hellebuck is the favorite, and I'm kind of trying to look at players on the Jets that are like way deeper down the board that might have a chance. And like Josh Morrissey is 410 to 1 right now to win the Conn Smythe, and he's going to get extreme minutes. In my opinion, he was a top 3 D-man in the league this year as well. There's no way they're going on a playoff run this year where they win the cup, and Morrissey is not a huge piece of that. Like Nikolai Ehlers is priced ahead of Morrissey, and he might not even play in the first round of the playoffs. So to me, that's like a huge misprice in the market. And that I'm not in on like betting all these Jets derivatives in the first round, but I think there is some value on like fading Hellebuck to be the be all and end all for them. Because as they get deeper into the playoffs, there might be some games that are a little bit more high scoring. And I do think defensemen will get a lot of credit for Hellebuck's performance as well. So Morrissey, I mean, that just to me stands out as like a no-brainer long shot bet.
Yeah, Jets being a little bit disrespected in like the futures markets overall, not so much in this series, but like beyond this, it feels like they're not really being given as much of a chance as they should be, because they're definitely, I think there's a little bit of some mispricing in terms of their odds to go on and win the West and to go win the cup even. But we can get into that stuff a little bit later too. Is there any like series stuff you guys are playing here? Or you're just going to kind of sit back and maybe more attack this kind of game to game?
Yeah, I did play the Jets -1.5 in there on the spread. And look, I've been the leader of the Jets slander all year, right? Like,
yeah, you have.
Right, and like, but I mean, like, there's certain things here that I'm just not going to ignore that are showing up in my numbers, right? There's a way that you feel about a team and the way that what the numbers are telling you, right? And this is a Jets team that I've probably been harder on them than I should have been. But that's a team that, like Rob mentioned, that is a complete team, and you add the element of kind of breaking through, and we see that with teams sometimes. It takes a couple of disappointments, couple of just inexplicable losses, which the Jets have, especially last year in that Colorado series, how just everything just fell apart out of nowhere, right? And the extent to which it fell apart, stuff like that stays with you, and it has stayed with the Jets. And sometimes you just need to break out a little bit, even if it's against a weaker opponent. And I think that there's an element to that. I think we're going to see a powerhouse Jets team in the first round, and then we'll be back here in a couple of weeks talking about, are they overvalued now?
And are they overvalued? It will come against one of Dallas or Colorado, which is our next series here. Stars +126 now, Avs -152, as that number has really run since opening around -115, -120. Obviously, the Robertson injury, the Heiskanen injury, the Stars losing like a million games in a row to end the season. If there's any team that can sort of turn it on, there's not many that can do that in this league, but Dallas is one of the few with the talent they have on the roster and the veterans they have, and the coach DeBoer, obviously. But like, it just feels like we're heading into this series and the Stars are just completely cooked. I don't know if any of you guys wants to step up here and make a case for the Stars, or I mean, I don't think, it's weird because like no one is giving them a chance. Obviously, this is a team that has been right there for a few years now. So it's still a great roster, even with the injuries. It's still a very, very good team. Are we sleeping on Dallas a little bit right now, or like you guys agree that they're kind of cooked here?
I don't know that they're cooked. Like, I definitely agree with the market movement towards Colorado based off of the open, right? Like, Robertson is a big loss for that team. I mean, you think of Dallas, and that's not to say they don't have great players or elite players, but you think of them as like a deep team, right? And Robertson had such a great year. Okay, next man up mentality. We've seen that in the past before with the Stars in the playoffs. That could totally work for them, right? Like, we've seen guys like Wyatt Johnston in the playoffs before be like favorite at one point to win the Conn Smythe. Yeah. So it's not like they can't do that overall. but you have to account for the team that they're playing as well. And they're running into a Colorado team that has a lot of top-end talent. But of course, Colorado has concerns of their own, right? I mean, Mackenzie Blackwood is a big unknown when it comes to the playoffs relative to Jake Ottinger. So there's many reasons that Dallas could still win this series, but it's really challenging to do it without your best D-man. And, likely, I mean, if Heiskanen comes back, it sounds like it's going to be the end of round one and maybe not at full health. So I would consider him almost a lost cause for the series. Robertson not being there, key offensive player. Colorado doesn't have those disadvantages. So I totally get the line move, but Dallas is live. Like, it's not going to surprise me if the Stars are going to win the series, but I do agree that Colorado should be favored here.
So, Money?
Yeah. Colorado should be favored. I do agree with the line movement. Obviously, those losses are big, but I think that we've probably gone a little bit too far now in terms of market in terms of sentiment of this series here. Dallas, it's not like they're going to lay down. It's not going to be a short series. Even without those two guys, Dallas they're going to win their games in this series. Now, if it's enough to get past Colorado, I don't think so. And it's not just because of the players; it's because of there are certain things I'm seeing in Ottinger's game, especially down the stretch here, that is concerning. Dallas defensively, they're very leaky, right? And they don't, and that kind of profile doesn't fit the profile of past Stanley Cup winners. There's a certain way that you need to be playing defensively and 5-on-5, and Dallas doesn't hit that criteria. Colorado does to a large extent, but Dallas doesn't. Right. And so that would be concerning for me going into the series. The problem is that in a different matchup, I think that Dallas would be exposed more than what Colorado can do to them in this matchup. Right. So what I'm saying is that the way you beat Dallas is that Colorado can outscore them, but I don't know if Colorado, we can rely on them defensively to limit Dallas's chances, because Dallas will generate, especially because they are already leaky defensively. This could turn into a high-scoring series, and I don't know if that's something that would benefit Colorado in that sense, because Dallas is a good shooting team as well, and they have finishers on that team. So I think it'll be a tight series. I did play Colorado earlier. I know, Moretto, you did as well, but it's going to be tight, and I think we've gone a little bit too far with the Av sentiment.
I think with this series, and a lot where the series is priced pretty relatively close to one another. You got two really good teams, Dallas, Colorado. Most people tend to think that it's going 6, it's going 7, it's got to be a long series, right? People just don't realize how often some of these series end in 4 or 5 games, even when the teams are pretty evenly matched. And when I look at Dallas and Colorado, I actually like this a bet in this series, which is the series to end in 4 games. This could be either team sweeping. It's 6-1 at FanDuel. But to me, both these teams have a very wide range. When either of these teams is playing really well, they're almost untouchable. And at their floor, they're terrible. And we saw that with Dallas down the stretch this year as well. So, I don't necessarily think that this is going to be like this tightly contested series all the way through that's going to go 7 games. I think that's just the natural narrative that people have. I think there's very much a path to either of these teams just rolling the other one. We saw Colorado sweep the season series with Dallas this year as well. I'm pretty sure that happened. I'll double check that, but I believe that happened. I think that the floor for both these teams is actually way lower than people realize. And there is a chance that we just see it over and done with pretty early, especially when you consider Dallas is going to start without Robertson and Heiskanen.
And on that note, too, I also bet under 5.5 games in this series. There were some bigger prices, but still plus 152, I think is a good bet for this to end in 5 games or fewer. Just echoing all the same stuff you said there. Don't really need to repeat any of it, but I like that bet as well. I do agree, so Money, that this will be a higher scoring series. I do think there will be goals here. I mean, you look at the right side of defense for Dallas, Ilya Lyubushkin, Cody Ceci, Matt Dumba. That is unserious. That is worse than 80% of teams in this league. They've been managing Thomas Harley's minutes a little bit down the stretch to keep him fresh. they are going to ride him like crazy in this series. They are going to ask a ton for him. He's going to be out there on the ice for close to 30 minutes a game. Right now, you can get him at plus 470 on FanDuel to score 2 goals in the series. I think that is way too big of a number considering how many minutes he's going to be out on the ice for. He does like to shoot the puck, especially on the power play. Now, without Robertson there, that takes away one of their shooters. Harley has a very good shot. They will key in on him a little bit more to rely on a little bit of offense from there. I think that is way too big of a number for Thomas Harley. 2+ goals, plus 470. You can also get him to score 1 goal in the series at minus 130. I prefer the 2+, obviously, but yeah, just too big of a number for a guy who's going to play as many minutes as he is here.
To your point as well on the series as a whole, I was looking at the game 1 total, and I actually think we should see 6s in this series instead of juiced 5.5s towards the over. I think that this is going to be a very open series. To So Money's point, Dallas is pretty leaky defensively. I think I like Ottinger, but I think people hold him in a class that he's not truly in as a goal. Like statistically speaking, you look at the numbers,
he's streaky,
are fine,
right? He's very streaky.
Yeah, true, for sure. And Colorado wants to play pretty wide open as well. You're going to see them really they're going to utilize Makar as much as humanly possible over the course of the playoffs. So I do foresee myself betting a lot of overs in this series unless the market adjusts. Yeah.
It is not in Dallas's best interest to play a tight series either. They just basically have to be willing to open this up because they're not able to lock things down in the back end. So they're just going to have to be like, let's just open this up and hope that Ottinger gets hot and we can ride him and he can outplay Blackwood. And that's basically our path to winning the series. So I think they're going to be, comfortable playing that way. And I don't think they're going to be much opposition from the Avs. One other note on the Stars, 29th in expected goal share at 5-on-5. Since the start of March. They've been bad for a long time. It's not just this little losing streak to end the year where there wasn't that much to play for. They have been bad for a while. So I am a little bit nervous about this team. I do think there's a pathway to ending early and us seeing a lot of goals. So we do have a few bets in that one. We will move on to the Sunday slate here where the first series kicking off on Sunday is that afternoon matinee game between the Hurricanes and the Devils. Hurricanes out to minus 280 right now. Devils plus 225 in this series. So Money, on one of our shows last week, you made a small case for the Devils. And now we've gotten news since that Dougie Hamilton will be back for this series here. You feeling even better about New Jersey at this point, or are you kind of wanting to walk that back a little bit here?
So I'm not going to walk it back, but I will say that it's about the price, right? And I think that Carolina ran too much, and we expected them to. Dougie Hamilton he's one of those game changers on this team that can drive play for them, right? The way that this team is built, he really fits well into the mold of what the Devils want to do. Carolina, it's tough for me because Carolina, everything that they profile as, it's the same every year, right? Like I'm like when I was breaking down all the elements of the Carolina game and how they fit in previous years, how they stack up to previous Cup winners profile, it's all the same every year. This is what we talk about all the time. They're a very, very good 5-on-5 team. They have their goals for share, and everything is there for this team. But what happens in the playoffs? They just can't finish, right? And I tend to think that at some point, these teams that do the same thing every year and get incrementally better every year, at some point they break through. My problem with Carolina is that I don't know if they are incrementally better than they were last year. Right, especially defensively, especially in goal, right? Offensively, they've shown a better finish ability, but they've really dropped off in goal, right? And that's my big concern with Carolina long term. In this series, I don't think it's going to matter. I think that when we talk about wide open series, I would want to bet this series to have the most goals scored in it, right? I can see you guys' point of Dallas, Colorado being a shorter series, but with high-scoring games. If that is the case, I would make the argument that the New Jersey, Carolina series would be a longer series with high-scoring games as well. So that's the way that I would want to attack this series, because frankly, both teams have questions in goal. Both teams struggle defensively at times, and I think that if Carolina has gotten incrementally better at finishing, then there's going to be a lot of goals in this series. In terms of the pricing, I still see value in New Jersey. I'm not there yet. I want a little bit more. I don't know if I'm going to get it, but ultimately, I think Carolina wins this series, but it's not going to be as straightforward as what the odds indicate.
Yeah, I'm kind of in agreement there as well. Like, I would never lay this price with Carolina. Listen, Freddie Anderson was good since he came back, like really elite GSAX numbers. I don't think that's, going forwards. Like, who knows? Kochetkov, fine. Like, they have a tandem and they can go to either one over the course of the playoffs if one is struggling. But this is like, if you're going to lay minus 280, I want like a confident backstop in net. And they just don't have that right now. I could easily see a scenario where Markstrom just plays out of his mind. Carolina, again, it's the same story every single year. They lead the league in shot share, top 5 expected goals percentage. They're out chancing opponents all season. It gets to the playoffs. Can they score is what it comes down to, because we've seen this show many, many times before. So I just don't really like the Devils as a team, honestly. Without Jack Hughes, you look up and down the lineup, you're like, oh man, they have the talent to compete here, right? Like, they lose their best puck carrier, their best transition weapon. Their penalty kill has been a liability for them all year long. There's a lot of reasons not to like New Jersey, but it's all factored into the price that we're seeing here, and everything is relative to price. So I could only bet the Devils in this series. I'm not going to. I think Carolina, as good as their season-long metrics look, I think they are ripe for the picking in the playoffs.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I'm just so out on this Devils team. I think they're kind of it's not a good matchup for them either. I think they're, aside from that top pairing of Hughes and Hamilton, they're really slow on the back end, which is a really bad matchup for them, because I think Carolina will be able to cycle and forecheck the shit out of them and just play the game they want to. I don't see New Jersey having much say in that, and they're just going to have to let it happen and hope for the best. Markstrom, we've seen him completely collapse in playoffs of years past. I don't necessarily feel much confidence in him, and I just don't see goals in the lineup up front. Like, I really don't. I love Heischer. I think he's a fantastic player. Bratt, obviously, has some offensive upside, Meyer, but like Mercer as your 2C, Glass and Lazar down the middle behind them. It gets really thin really quickly. I'm pretty out on this team. I do think Carolina has their way here. It's obviously priced in. I'm not going to be rushing. I'm not betting anything at this point, like where the numbers have gone, even series spread, anything like that. I do think this series ends sooner than later, though. I do disagree a little bit with you, Somani, about being a higher scoring series. I actually kind of feel the other way about this. Like, we see Carolina struggle to score and they need to generate a ton in order to score goals. I think that kind of, always sort of rears its head in the playoffs. I don't see much offense from this Devils team. I don't see where the goals are going to come from. And then you look at these two teams on the penalty kill, the number 1 and number 2 penalty kills in the NHL. These are two teams that are very, very good shorthanded. I don't think there's going to be a ton of power play goals here. I feel like I'm going to be betting a lot of unders in this and just holding my breath and hoping that Markstrom doesn't go full Calgary playoff Markstrom here. But that's kind of the way I was going to be attacking this, more game to game, where I just don't see a lot of goals here. So I don't know, maybe like a little mini head to head here. But I think New Jersey is really going to struggle to put the puck in the net in this series.
Yeah, I wonder, like the regular season matchups, they were pretty open, but obviously this is a different game. I mean, my biggest concern, even for the Devils, if you look at the 4 regular season matchups, even the 2 games that the Devils won, I think they were pretty badly outchanced and outshot in those games. I do like this will be a tilted ice series. I feel pretty confidently Carolina is going to have a lot of ozone time. It's just a question of whether the better finishing this year is actually real, or you get to playoff time again and Carolina generates all these turnovers on the forecheck and whatever, but they just don't have like the elite top end talent to basically score at will. So I don't know. This one is one of the series for me where I just don't really have a strong opinion or feel on it.
Yeah, I've tried to throw the regular season meetings out and not even really pay attention to them, because all of them happened before 2025. They all happened in December or earlier. Jack Hughes was in all of them. The teams looked a little bit different. A lot's changed since then, so I've kind of been throwing them out the window a little bit. But yes, they were a bit higher scoring. Obviously, like I'm not trying to sit here and like I've been pretty harsh on the Devils down the stretch, but like this is not the full Devils team. That's all it is. It's all boiled down to they got unlucky with injuries again. It happens. I'm not like saying going forward next year they need to rebuild, tear it down, nothing like that. This is still a good roster. When fully healthy, things didn't break their way this year, and now they're running into a tough Carolina team in round one that I think just poses a bad matchup for them. That's it. Maybe in another series they would have had a bit of a better chance in my mind, but I just think stylistically, the way Carolina wants to play and the way the Devils line up on the back end, I just think it's a really bad matchup here. Okay, let's move on to the one that Rob, I know, is dying to talk about here, the Battle of Ontario, the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Ottawa Senators. Leafs out to -184 on FanDuel, Sens +152. We have not seen the Battle of Ontario since, I believe, 2004. I grew up on those series. Even as a Habs fan, watching those was incredible. I don't think it's going to be the same without Bob Cole. Rest in peace. He was an iconic voice to those series, but it's still going to be a fantastic battle here. I cannot wait for these. Rob, how are you feeling about your Leafs here in round one?
I mean, definitely nervous, just based off the Leafs track record in recent postseasons under, this core that they've had. I think it's a tough matchup for them. I like Toronto's definitely a deserving favorite. They have home ice. They've been the better team all year, but I do expect this series to play tight. And we've talked about it a lot on the show this year, but at even strength, Ottawa has had the better underlying numbers. They defend better than the Leafs. They're more efficient in terms of shot share and expected goals creation. Where Toronto separates themselves is in a few categories. One is that they do have elite top-end talent. Whether or not that's going to matter in the playoffs, who knows? We've seen a lot of, Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner struggles in the playoffs in years past. Toronto does have they're better on special teams, plain and simple. The power play is way more dangerous. The penalty is an advantage over Ottawa's as well. But that's why I think the early part of this series is so important for the Leafs to establish themselves, because you tend to see power plays at regular rates, and then as the series goes on, they tend to dip. Refs swallow the whistle a little bit more, and now you're playing more and more of the series at 5-on-5. So I think the Leafs have to get out on a good foot here. I think they have to win the first couple of games at home and really cement that. Ottawa going back home 1-1, that's going to be a big advantage for them as the series goes on and more of it's played at 5-on-5. My optimism for the Leafs, though, does come from the play of Anthony Stolarz, which he has just been so good. Like, they're basically been coin flipping games for a month now, trading chances.
Arguably like 4 months, but
he's just been electric goalie for them. And Linus Ullmark is solid as well, but we've seen him shit the bed in the playoffs before. We have seen that happen, and I think the Leafs have advantages in top end talent, special teams, and in net. What do I price this at? Well, somewhere in the -145 range. I wouldn't bet Toronto at the current prices. It would only look to Ottawa, but I think this is one of the few series out there where I will be involved in some live series betting opportunities as it goes on, because I think the longer it goes, the more that's going to favor Ottawa.
So, Money, you've been talking about the Sens all season. They were your team. You backed them at the beginning of the year to make the playoffs. You've been hyping the Travis Green and Ottawa, train all year, and then over the last 2 weeks, you've done a little bit of a flip here, and now you're pro Leafs. So tell us why, and are you doing anything with this series because of it?
I can just listen to Rob talk. I can just see the tempered expectations. He's emotionally hedging right now, right? The Leafs, he wants the Leafs to win so badly, but he's trying to make this a tight series in his head. So a couple of things. When you guys were talking about the Dallas Colorado series, I completely agree. There's series, and we see this every year, where you expect long series and they're just short series for whatever reason. It happens all the time. I don't see that in Dallas Colorado, but there's two series where I do see that with, and one of them is Toronto Ottawa. I think that it's not going to be in the past. We don't have Patrick Aleem in there. We have Allmark, who does who does have the capability of stealing games, but he also has, as Rob mentioned, the ability to shit the bed too. What I think separates this Leafs team from previous iterations is that they have a stronger attention to detail on defense, but it's not the driving factor of that of their game. And I think that that's the big difference from the past, where previous coaching staffs wanted the Leafs to play better defensively, but that's where their games started from. This version of this team does want to play strong defensively, but they also push forward, right? And that's where I think it's going to separate these teams here, because Toronto does have good defensive numbers, but they are much better offensively. Ottawa has trouble finishing a lot of times. I think in this series we'll see Toronto carry the play most of the time, and as long as goaltending stands up, even at an above average level, which there's no indication that it's not going to. Like there's nothing that I've seen from Stolar's play that makes me think that he's going to struggle. So I think that expecting an above average goaltending output from him is pretty reasonable, right? So as long as we get that, this is a different Leafs team that is able to complement the way they want to play defensively with a strong offensive game as well. They're much better defending the rush this year than they were last year. And frankly, I don't know how much Ottawa can generate on the rush anyways, right? Ottawa needs to be they basically need to have their high danger chances and finish at that level. And I don't think they're going to get that from the Leafs in this series. So I actually look at this as last week when this series was starting to kind of come into fruition here, I would have felt that it's going to be a longer series. But as I work through the numbers, as I work through these teams, I actually think it's going to be a pretty short series here for the Leafs.
I just saw one thing in the comments. So a few things. I agree with a lot of what So Money said. I think the way that Ottawa is built as a team, which is a really good forechecking team, has historically been a challenge for the Leafs to go up against. You look at the teams that they've grinded them in the playoffs, their defensemen have turned it over a lot. Yeah. Granted, it's a little bit different this year. They have Tanev. McCabe he's going to play in the series, has emerged as he stepped up the lineup a little bit. They're not as reliant on Morgan Riley and stuff like that anymore. But those teams that put the puck in deep and lay it on the Leafs defensemen and they can't move it out of the zone has been a problem going on 5 years now for the Leafs, which is why it's very important that Ekman Larsson and McCabe can play in this series. Also, I saw this comment from Will in the chat, which was, I think Rob needs to recheck the data. And this is in regards to even strength. And Ottawa has not scored at even strength this year. But I think this is the difference between, I like Dom, he's a friend of mine, but he really values the actual goals a lot. Whereas I'm kind of in the mix where I value expected goals a lot as well, right? And Ottawa has shot horribly at 5-on-5 this year, like a bottom 3 team in the league, whereas the Leafs are shooting close to 10% at 5-on-5. So if you look at the actual goal numbers, they're very skewed. And listen, that could easily be replicated in the playoffs. But my point is that the Leafs trade a lot of chances. They're going to play a 50-50 type of game, and they rely on their goaltending and their high-end finishing talent to win them the games. And historically speaking, that's not all that replicatable in the playoffs. That's why I worry a little bit. But like I said, early series, you probably see a lot of power plays, physical, teams trying to set the tone. I think that works in the Leafs' favor in the early going here. I think they can run out and get out to a hot start. But man, if they lose one of those first 2 games, I really think that it's time to start to sound the alarm bells, because that they're gonna feel the pressure of what the series is gonna bring.
So yeah, I think if you kind of blind resume this, not this series necessarily, but just the Leafs as a whole, you would not be very high on this team and you would be able to poke a lot of holes in them quite easily. I think early on in the playoffs, they're going to be just fine. I think they're going to be very, very good in this series. I'm not high on Ottawa. I think if I had to make a case for Ottawa, it's that, they're the type of team that maybe can turn it on and play a very different style come playoffs with the heaviness of a Dylan Cousins, who did not have a good regular season. He can become a different player in the playoffs. Brady to Chuck, if he's anywhere close to healthy, which I am very, very skeptical that will be the case. I think he's going to be far from 100% here. Olmark makes me nervous. Like, I don't think he has the full body of work as a starter in this league. I think he can wear down quite quickly. I don't think Ottawa's the team that's going to, cause some regression from Stolarz or anything like that. I do think there's a pathway to this ending quickly. I did bet Leafs -2.5. I did bet some Leafs -1.5. You can get +230 on that -2.5. So, like, I do really like the Leafs here, but I think I hope they win this series quickly, because I will be probably looking to fade them going ahead in round 2. Let's see what happens in that Tampa-Florida series first and how deep it goes, how healthy those teams come out of it. But, like, I think, Robbie talked about how they've been playing a lot of coin flip games. It's true. You look at teams that are kind of modeled after them, where, like, they don't necessarily have good underlying numbers. You just have a very high shooting percentage and elite goaltending. That's not a recipe for success. Obviously, it's possible to continue that, and it's possible for Stolarz to just go on a heater and take this team as far as they need to go. But, like, it's very hard to replicate that as the games get tighter and as we get into, like, the deeper rounds, and as you're playing teams that are on your level every night. You're not playing teams that are kind of have different focuses and all that sort of stuff. I think we're kind of like so many, I think, to push back on what you said a little bit about this team being different, I think the only thing that's different about this team is the elite goaltending that they've been getting. If anything, I think they're a little bit, they're better coached in the sense where, like, they're going to try and do the little things right, but they're worse coached in terms of, like, game plan and how they approach games and stuff like that. My worry for them is the fact that, like, you're going to come up against teams that are now taking things very serious. I think down the stretch, we're winning a lot of games where you're playing teams that are kind of, like, have different focuses and have different, things that they want to accomplish down the stretch, maybe staying healthy or just, like, not necessarily putting the same emphasis on this. You made sense for the Leafs to put the emphasis on these final, month of the season, because winning the division was so huge for them. Versus, we've talked about this on the show before, versus some of these other teams where maybe, like, they don't really care where they finish. They're confident in what they can do. The Leafs needed to win this division. And good for them. They got the job done. They did exactly what they needed to do. And that says something. And maybe that gives them the confidence going forward. But yeah, what we've seen from them overall in their games since, like, you look at, like, from them through the start of the season, it's like the end of November, they were an elite defensive team and a very, very good team overall. Since then, their numbers have been really, really poor. They're below league average in chance creation, in chances giving up, all that sort of stuff at 5-on-5. It has not been very good. The penalty kill makes me a little bit nervous. Power play is obviously very good. Is it going to go into hiding again come playoffs time? I think that's the question. But obviously, Stolarz can take them very far because he's been fantastic. But, like, I think this series, they get through this pretty quickly. I'm just not there on Ottawa. But it's going forward. I think maybe there'll be some opportunity to fade this team.
FanDuel has some unique markets for this series as well. Yeah. I bet some John Tavares to lead the series in goals at 8-1. I think it was plus 850 earlier today, but roughly 8-1. Again, I know the Leafs have struggled in power play in the playoffs in the past. I'm not impressed with Ottawa's penalty kill. I think they actually overpress a lot of times, and that's going to work to their disadvantage because the Leafs can really move it with the power play. And Tavares has been, Tavares had a great year. I don't want to call him a power play merchant. He was actually really good on 5-on-5 and putting the puck in the back of the net as well. But he's kind of playing that, like, in front of the net slot type, getting a lot of chances, high danger looks on the power play this year as well. I like John Tavares to have a series. I really do. I think he's had a rejuvenated year, and where we've seen other guys disappear in the playoffs in the past, but particularly Matthews and Marner, I think Tavares could give them some life in this series.
Yeah, I like that look. I like the breakdown quite a bit too. While we're looking at derivative markets, another player market that I really, really liked here, one of my favorite bets here, aside from those Leafs series spreads, is Jake Sanderson to score 1 goal in the series, and that is plus 115. He is an absolute stud. Like, he nailed down his defensive game. He has turned himself into a elite defenseman in the NHL, like a top 10, top 15 guy in this league. Just an absolute workhorse. And he has really honed in down the stretch and contributing on the offensive side as well. He kind of really nailed down the defensive side, and now he's very much rounded out his game, significantly up that offensive output. I think it was very intentional. He's much more comfortable joining the rush. He's trusting his shot a lot more. He's even become a bit of a focal point on power play 1. Scored just 2 goals in his first 49 games. He has 9 in 30 since to close out the season. He is shooting the puck way more. You look at the last month of the season, he's factoring in a lot of what they do offensively. I do think I do not think you should be getting plus money on Jake Sanderson to score a single goal in the series. Again, another guy similar to the Harley handicap. He's going to be out on the ice a ton. He's going to factor into everything that they do in all situations. Every time they're chasing a goal late, 6-on-5, every time they're on the power play, all that sort of stuff. Jake Sanderson is going to be out there, and he is going to be a focal point for them. Do not think you should be getting plus money to score a single goal in this series. So I really, really like that bet as well.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see where Max Pacioretty slots in the lineup as well for the playoffs, which if he's next to Tavares and Nylander, I'd be looking at some anytime goal scorer stuff on Pacioretty. Not listed yet because we don't even know like what's going to happen with the Leafs lineup, but it'll be curious what they do there. I would expect that they probably drop Robertson from the lineup because it seems Berube doesn't like him a whole lot. And he does take a lot of, like, let's say, needless chances in his own end with, passing the puck off the back of the net to himself and stuff like that, which maybe won't go over with a coach like Berube all that much. But I'm interested to see where Pacioretty slots into the lineup because I think, his ability to help on the cycle, especially with a guy like Nylander with him, could really be that was the line that started the year together. Pacioretty, Tavares, Nylander. Wouldn't surprise me if they go together for the playoffs as well.
Yeah. One thing I like in this series is that in previous years, when the Leafs get shut down in the playoffs, when things get tighter, Austin Matthews gets shut down or Nylander gets shut down. That's it for that team. There's no secondary game breaking talent on that team. I think it's different this year. I do like Matthew Knies too. I like him a lot as a player, and I like him in a series like this where if Ottawa knows, as most teams know, that you need to shut down the top line, but I think Knies can be a game breaker in this series. So him being at 10-1 as the leading goal scorer in this series, I think there's a lot of value there. If the Leafs are going deep, if this is going to be a short series, it's because they got tremendous secondary scoring, and the player to lead that, in my opinion, would be someone like Matthew Knies.
Yep, fair enough. Seems like we're fairly aligned on this series. Rob, maybe just the jaded Leafs fan with a little bit of hesitation, which I can understand. But
we'll Leafs go, baby. I just listen. I've seen this. I've seen this. Maybe you're right. Maybe it's just Jade. Listen. I'm just running numbers, anyways. My numbers have nothing to do with. But there is a part of me that I can see it. Ottawa is going to play a very, very physical series, and I think they're really going to try to rattle the Leafs hard. And if that first game goes in their favor, I think we really, really got a series on our hands. But listen, there's a wide range of outcomes in any of these series, and if the Leafs play their game and they still get Stolarz playing good goaltending, they'll win it easily.
Yeah, you lose game one, you're gonna go change your pants in your underwear because things are gonna get a little bit messy real quickly there. All right, we'll move on to the West here. I don't know if you guys saw the schedule for this one, but on I think it's the Tuesday night, Vegas and Minnesota has an 11 p.m. Eastern start time. Yeah. Just a disaster. I don't know how I'm gonna be in shambles doing edge work every day during the playoffs, staying up till 2 a.m. watching these games. Vegas minus 235 in this series. The Wild plus 190. I don't know who wants to take the floor here first. So I'll throw it to you, but we've been kind of up and down on this show this season on this Wild team. We were down on them coming into the year. We were a little bit higher on them after that start. We fully bought in, and then injuries sort of derailed them, and it was easy to fade them down the stretch. And now they're healthy at the right time. They're getting some reinforcements with Zeev Buium in there as well, for the University of Denver product, who's going to looks like he's going to make his debut in game one. Talk about being, feet to the fire. Are you where do you come in on this Wild team now that the playoffs are actually starting?
So it's funny. This is another team where my opinion changes as the game changes going into the playoffs. So in the regular season, at the end of the regular season, I didn't like this Wild team. I thought that, especially with the injuries, I thought that they didn't have enough to get into the playoffs. Now that they're in the playoffs and they're relatively healthy, I like their game a lot. It's going to be a tough series because a lot of things that the Wild want to do, Vegas does that much better, right? And they both want to play physical. They both want to forecheck. They both have finishers. It's just that Vegas is better, right? I will say though, I think that there's value on the Wild number because both these teams are very similar. I think that that's going to lend itself to a longer series, and as we as we get longer into game 6 and 7, possibly, um, I think that the Wild, the way that they've had to play down the stretch, the way that they've shown that they can win close games, I think that that's going to lend itself to possibly an upset here. I'm not officially calling it an upset because it's a very tight matchup with these teams in my view. But I think that because it's such a tight matchup, I'm more inclined to bet on the Wild in this in the series. In terms of market timing, I think that I've been waiting because I think I can get a better number on the Wild. So that's the only reason I haven't bet it already.
I'm opposite of that opinion. Listen, it's a pretty steep price on Vegas. Don't get me wrong. I think you kind of touched on it a little bit. So Money, I think the way that Minnesota plays, Vegas just plays that style a lot better than Minnesota does overall. Now I am again, Aiden Hill. Can he be the guy? Well, we've seen him be the guy in the past before, but he didn't have a great season overall. I mean, he was on par with Gustafsson basically in this series. So goaltending probably a wash. But I look at Vegas. They're very strong 5-on-5. They generate offense off the cycle more effectively than I think any team in the league. They're very, very good at doing that. And their special teams is really steady. It helps them control games. Obviously, Minnesota got a lot healthier down the stretch with Kaprizov, Eriksson Ek. It's hard to really quantify what that team is because they play 20 games without both of those guys, and that's really going to hurt them at some point. But I just think Vegas is marginally better across the board than Minnesota is. Even when they played in the regular season, I think Kaprizov and Eriksson Ek played for a couple of those games. Vegas controlled them in a big way. I don't know. I've been an anti-Wild guy pretty much the entire season, even when they were healthy. So there's maybe a little bit of bias built in here. But I think Vegas is going to win this series rather easily because I think they play the same game that the Wild do, but they just do it a whole lot better.
Fair enough. I kind of would lean more with So Money on this one. I do think Vegas wins this series. I do think Vegas is a very good team. And honestly, I was kind of hoping to be able to back the Wild in some capacity coming into the playoffs down the stretch. This is just not the matchup for it. It is a big number. If I had to bet it at this point on the series, the straight up series winner, I would bet the Wild. I'm not going to do it though. I do think this Wild team is a little bit dangerous. I really, really like their makeup on the back end. You look at Vegas on the back end, they're a little bit slower. They're getting a little bit older. Minnesota can attack them with some speed. If they're able to do that, maybe they can give them some problems. Gustafsson is capable of stealing games. Obviously, Hill is very good as well. It's not like they have an edge in goal. I like their depth up front, though. Minnesota, the bottom six is still pretty good. Now that they're healthy and Bouillon becomes an X factor too here. You see what Lane Hudson did coming into the season. I don't think anyone expected that sort of impact. There's no reason Bouillon can't be a very, very similar player. Obviously now, making your NHL debut in game 1 of the regular season, or I guess game 81, 82, like Hudson did last year, versus game 1 of the playoffs in Vegas against the team that won the Cup a couple of years ago is a very different beast. But just adds another little element that isn't priced into this Wild team. Obviously, their season-long numbers have taken a massive hit because of just the magnitude of injuries and the length of the injuries they've been faced with all season. I do think there's a little bit of hidden value on the Wild. Nothing that I'm jumping at here, but what I do like here is the over 5.5 games. One of the few series I feel a little bit confident in that will, definitely make it over that point. You can see a lot of other series. There's a pathway to them ending early. I do think Minnesota is still too good, and Vegas is not a team that's going to just kind of run you out of the building, right? They do play a lot of tight games. They do kind of play a lot of coin flippy games. They don't necessarily have the scoring. I think the Wild will definitely be able to at least take a couple here and keep this tighter. Only minus 158 on that over 5.5. I think that is a little bit short here. So that's kind of the way I am betting this one here to go over 5.5 games.
Yeah, I don't know. I look at the middle of like Minnesota's lineup, and I just like Gaudreau and Johansson, and like Nyquist has been terrible. I just see so much dead weight. I do like the way that they're built on the back end. Don't get me wrong. Like, especially their top 4D, whatever their bottom pairing is, like Bogosian, and I don't even remember who the other.
It'll probably be Boyum at this point now. Yeah.
Yeah. But the middle of that depth, like I see Vegas winning all of those minutes personally. I mean, listen, you can get Minnesota has great top end talent as well. You know, Kaprizov obviously, but even guys like Marco Rossi's had a great year. Marcus Foligno had a great year in my opinion
Foligno,
as well.
Though. I love Foligno. He's a playoff guy too.
He's a playoff guy, like his dad.
Well, that line, maybe they get Nyquist going because I think Rossi was playing with Foligno and Nyquist as well.
Yeah.
But,
which could be a very, very good line, honestly. And I like Zuccarello a lot. Gaudreau, I agree, he's kind of ass. I do think Eriksson Ek is one of the most underrated players in this league, though. Like he does not get the credit he deserves. Yeah.
Oh, I love that line. I love Eriksson Ek, Boldy, Kaprizov. That's great. But like when Gaudreau is out there with Johansson, like they're going to lose those minutes, like pretty regularly against anyone in the Vegas top 9. So, all right. I mean, I'll be the.
Yeah. And I mean
Yep.
Yeah, like that's the great thing about the NHL playoffs compared to other sports, right? You have the capability the ability that lower seeded teams have to go on a run, right? And the teams that are lower seeded, they profile a certain way, and the way that I see Minnesota, the way that they're built, they do profile as one of those lower seeded teams that could go for a run. Ultimately, I think that they're going to run into the winner of the Edmonton LA Kings series, which we'll talk about in a couple of series, that is ultimately going to stop them. But I think that for this series, I think that they have the potential to go on a run here.
I'm glad you said that because you teed me up perfectly. Speaking of lower seeded teams going on a run, our next series here is the Montreal Canadiens taking on the Washington Capitals. Habs plus 220, Caps minus 275. The first place in the East, Washington Capitals. I could spend 30 minutes talking about the series. No one wants to do that. Our viewership would drop off considerably. I'm not going to do that. I do want to say a couple things quickly first. I think we're going to see a very different Montreal Canadiens team to the team that we saw in the last 2 weeks of the season. This is a team that has thrived when they're in this underdog role, when the pressure is off, as a lot of teams would when, you're kind of in this lower pressure situation, no expectations. But we have seen them very much thrive in these types of games. We saw them play some of these top teams in the East and all across the league very tightly throughout the season. Washington is a team that strikes me as just incredibly, incredibly vulnerable. Things could not have fallen better for the Habs. I think if they were in that Atlantic bracket, you take on any of Florida, Tampa, Toronto, I think it would have been potentially a very quick series. I don't think they would have had much of a say in any of those three matchups. But getting a Washington team here that basically, like, there was a tweet about, like showing their kind of PDO and like the heater they were on early in the year, how it goes up here and how much it fades. They profile very similar to a lot of other teams that kind of follow that same trajectory with their PDO throughout the years past. We've seen them fare very, very poorly come playoffs. Like the first place Chicago Blackhawks of like 2016, 2017 got swept by the Preds in round 1. We saw teams like the Rangers, the Habs in years past in 2017 lost in round 1. A lot of these teams kind of, a little bit overinflated based on their season numbers, which were not necessarily warranted. And then you look at Washington also, like Thompson battling an injury. He's a guy who was kind of faded also down the stretch. How healthy is he going to be? Is he even going to be starting game 1? I feel like he's the type of guy who kind of throws you off when you see him once, like, because he's a lefty. There's not many lefty goalies in this league, right? It kind of throws you off as a shooter. And then over a course of a series, you kind of realize, okay, he's not actually that good. And that's when you can kind of get after a guy like that. Like just being a lefty kind of throws guys off. He went into the playoffs last year as a starter for Vegas. That was the first time we had seen him in the playoffs. He took the net over for them, and during the season, he was really good down the stretch. We obviously know Aiden Hill struggled a lot last year. Thompson lasted 4 games, and he was eventually pulled, and Aiden Hill had to come into that series. I think that I just don't have a lot of faith in him. Maybe Charlie Lindgren can come in and be the guy for them. Maybe that's what they need. I don't know, but like I don't necessarily trust their goaltending whatsoever. I also don't trust the Habs. defensively. I think the Habs defensively, the team defense is a little bit of a mess. This is so many. You talked about Carolina, New Jersey being a higher scoring series. I think this will be the highest scoring series. I think we're going to see a ton of goals here. You look at that game one price, 5.5 minus 115 to the over. I will absolutely nuke that over. I absolutely love that. I think these games, there's no business for them to be lined at 5.5. I think there's a pathway to the Habs to make this a very close series. The plus 1.5, I like quite a bit, but I love anything you can get over-wise in this series, like a lot of player over stuff, goals over, all that sort of stuff. I think we are going to see a ton of goals between these two teams.
I think the Caps are vulnerable. I'm not sure the Habs are the team that's going to exploit that. The Habs are so bad defensively. I will say at least they have a decent penalty kill. That'll help them a lot against a team like Washington, who can move it pretty well on the power play. This kind of gives me vibes of, I'm horrible with years, so I can't remember the year, but Washington was the 1 seed in the East, and they like fell flat for the final couple months of the year, and they were playing the Flyers in round 1, and the Flyers ended the season like pretty hot going in, and everyone was like, what the hell is this price in this series? Everyone was betting Philly, and they just got...
I was on the Phillies. I was on the Flyers there.
Yeah, I don't remember, and I kind of get the same vibes here. Like Washington, they've been mired in like this Ovechkin record down the stretch. They've basically had the number one like wrapped up for a long time now. The games have been mostly meaningless for them, other than like, let's just get into the playoffs and be healthy. Montreal's been playing like all of these essentially playoff games going on a while now. I just kind of feel like that will have an impact in this series as well. And Washington's being a little bit underrated because of that. Now, with that said, the goaltending is a big problem. Logan Thompson started the year amazing. If he does come back early in this series, who knows what you're going to get? Lindgren could be an issue. Like, there's a legitimate chance that Montreal has the better goaltender in the series, and that would be very appealing as a plus 220 dog. But I kind of feel like Washington is maybe a little bit underrated at this point, and we're giving Montreal a little bit too much credit. I agree with Moretto's take on the overs in this series. I think he'll play wide open. I don't think Montreal is going to be able to defend Washington well at 5v5, and I do think they'll be able to generate some of their own chances as well. The regular season meetings were like pretty open-ended. You know, again, this playoffs, it's a little different, but I do agree. I think that'll be a good look for the series.
This has the hallmarks of an upset, right? We know it. We see it. We see a number 1 seed that's very vulnerable, very, very deficient, that didn't play well down the stretch. But let's hold on a second, right? The way that I see Montreal, Rob touched on it, how bad they are defensively. There's also that element. There was a comment in the chat about the pace of the playoffs. The pace is different, right? And I agree completely, especially a young team that had to fight to get in the playoffs. There's that human element of just taking a breath, right? Let's just take a breath for a second. I really want to see how this game 1 plays out. If Washington is tight, even I don't care what the final score of the game is. It could be like 7-3 Washington. Doesn't matter. I want to see how that game starts, right? Because if Montreal, if there's an element of let's just breathe a bit and they get blown out early in that game, I'm going to have a problem in this series with the Habs. If they can keep it close, even if they lose the game, if they can keep it close, I think that there's going to be better value in that series after the first game, even after the second game, going forward to bet Montreal, because you know that game 3 in Montreal, that's what's going to make or break this series for the Habs, right? And I want to see if they're able to handle the change of pace on the road first before I want to bet them to feed off that energy at home, right? So that's the way that I would attack this series, because I'm just not sure what we're going to get out of Montreal. Right? They could get blown out early, or they can keep it tight. And if they do keep it tight, I think there's value later on with the Habs. Yeah,
I agree. I'm not rushing to bet the Habs at some of these prices. There were some better numbers available a little bit earlier too that are kind of gone now. What I agree with Gin Rummy significantly though. I've been waiting for a total goals in the series number, because I do like it to go a bit closer to, not necessarily a 7-game series, but I do like it to go over 5.5 games quite a bit. And I think we're going to see a lot of goals in those games. So if we're able to get a market for something like total goals in the series, I think that you just have to obliterate that over, because I do think this I don't think Washington gets this done as quickly as the kind of line is suggesting here. And I get what you're saying. You want to wait until game one and see how they approach this. I think, honestly, though, the Habs are also a very erratic team. What we see in game one can encourage you quite a bit. And then we see a very different Habs team in game two. That's like, what the hell where was that game one effort now in game two? Or vice versa, where we see in game one, they don't show up and it's terrible. And then we see a different Habs team in game two. And that just comes with youth and inexperience. Like, that's just kind of the team they are. So I would just say tread a little bit lightly in terms of that, because I've watched this team, 82 times this season. They've been very, very inconsistent. They started the year as one of the worst teams in the NHL, second last in the NHL December 1st. They went on this absolute heater, and then they completely died again before Four Nations, and it looked like it was all over again. They were going to be a lottery pick team, and then they went on another heater coming out of the break. So game to game, month to month, they have been very, very erratic, and I think I don't think there's any reason to expect differently in this playoff series too.
I think from that point of view, you could parlay. There's like a game one and series parlay on FanDuel as well. So you could do something like Washington wins game one, Montreal wins the series plus 650, or you could do it the other way around, where Montreal wins game one, Washington wins series, depending on who you like in the series. But I agree, Montreal's incredibly inconsistent. It will not. There's like, I mean, the beauty of this year's playoffs is we're going into the first round. There's no team that's like higher than minus 280. Like, these are going to be good series, and anything can happen. It's there's no runaways here. And I just feel like Washington has kind of been foot off the gas for a while now. That's kind of, and
for sure.
And that's like, we tend to have a recency bias when it comes to this stuff. I think they're just a gear ahead of Montreal but we'll see.
Yeah, I think there's a very real chance that like teams like, I don't necessarily want to lump Dallas into that, but like Washington and a few other teams like Carolina that we've seen like just not look good down the stretch, it's because they don't care to. They didn't need to. They were kind of locked into where they were. And there's an element of that, which I'm curious to see which teams are actually going to be able to just turn it on and flip the switch, and which teams are going to get a bit stuck in that and kind of regret taking their foot off the gas a little bit here. But speaking of great series, I am super excited for this next one, the Oilers and the Kings. This one should be electric. The way the last game between them ended, Deneau coming out and making those comments about how they had the B squad out there trying to just injure them. Obviously, and then Corey Perry had some comments back at him. Those two guys, former teammates in Montreal too. This is the third or fourth year in a row that they're meeting. I think third year in a row, but fourth year in a row. Yeah, geez, we've seen LA come close a couple times. We've seen them come not so close. Plus 110 this year. They finally have home ice. Oilers minus 132, no Ekholm, a little bit more vulnerable. Rob, is this the year that the Kings can finally do it, or are you still siding with the Oilers?
No, I think it is. I think this should be priced as a coin flip, maybe even Kings small favorite in the series. This is coming from someone who pretty much bet Edmonton in this exact matchup every prior year. I just don't feel good about the Oilers without Ekholm on the back end. I think he has been absolutely huge for them since coming over. And that's going to be like a massive loss in this series. It's really tough to value what Edmonton is right now because they've played so much of the latter half of the year without Draisaitl or McDavid at one point or another. But I just don't like the team overall. And what gave them such an advantage in past years, I mean, you look back to last year, they had a historically good power play. Like, it was literally the best power play of all time. And now they're like a borderline top 10 power play. And yes, because McDavid and Draisaitl have missed time, they're probably a little bit better than that's shown. But that's like an edge that they've had in past years that is not quite there this season. They don't have a goaltender in Stuart Skinner, and he's fallen apart in playoffs in years past where they've had to go to the likes of Calvin Pickard as well. But most importantly is this finally has the Kings where they have the home ice in the series. And to me, I don't think there's a team in the league that benefits from home ice more than the LA Kings, not because of their record, but because of the line matching and because of the versatility of their centermen. So I think all of that, listen, I mean, you're betting against Draisaitl and McDavid. Like, you could easily lose and look like a complete idiot because they have that top-end talent, the ability to score on any shift, even when they're getting caved. And I'm not sure the Kings necessarily have that, but it's flipped this year. LA home ice, they get the final change. They get the matchups they want. Edmonton doesn't have a goaltender. They don't have the power play that they've had in years past. I think there's value with the Kings at this price.
So money.
Sorry,
You've been a Stuart Skinner defender throughout this season, and you said you believe he's a guy that can kind of turn it on and play well when he needs to. Does that come into play here for you at all? Or I know maybe you've said some other things, not necessarily about Skinner, but about this Kings team in our Edgeworth chat. Maybe makes me think that you are Team Kings right now.
So Rob mentioned that you can look like a complete idiot in this series, and I'm going to take that chance. I will take the plunge of looking like a complete idiot, and we can play this back in a couple of weeks. I am a Stuart Skinner defender. I'm a defender in him in games 6 and 7, right, where he plays well. I'm not a defender of him in the first 4 games of a series. I don't think this series gets to a game 6 or 7. I don't think it gets to a game 5. I think this is one of those series that inexplicably ends in a sweep. I think that, so a little bit into my process, right? Like there's certain things I look for in terms of profiling a team after the regular season, before the playoffs start, and how they slot in with different cup winners of the past, right? There's key elements of roster composition, where you are down the middle, where you are in the back end, a couple of key metrics I look at, and then I score the teams. The Kings scored off the charts. The Kings and the Jets actually scored higher than I thought, but the Jets scored off the charts as well. There's one other team that we'll talk about that was really high as well. I think we can guess if you've been watching the Edgeworth chats or the shows where I've valued them. But there's everything about this series that it's all coming together for the Kings. I wasn't impressed with Darcy Kemper earlier in his career. He's really turned his game around. Everything that Kemper has shown me as the years have gone on, for me, I'd rank him one step below the elite level.
Yes.
And that's a huge compliment considering who the elite goaltenders are in this series. Kings have a outstanding defensive core. They and they're deep at forward. Now, where they're deep at forward, it's not just the ability to score, it's what Rob mentioned, the ability to shut down. The way that you beat the Oilers is you limit them off the rush, right? That's no secret, right? Like you have 2 of the best players who can generate off the rush, which is not easy to do in this league. But the Kings are able to counter that, not only with their defense, but with the forwards that they can throw out. And then you look at the deficiencies the Oilers have shown this year, defensively for sure, right? But one thing Rob touched on is the power play, right? There was a series, I don't remember which one, if it was like the one 2 years ago or 3 years ago. They're all the same, but there was a series in there where like it was like every goal the Oilers scored was on the power play.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was sustainable in that 6 to 7 game sample size. That's not sustainable long term, right? And now what we're seeing with the Oilers is that teams get books on other teams, right? We're seeing that in order to defend the Oilers power play, you do need to be aggressive, right? And like you may get burned down low, but you take that chance. You may get Corey Perry scoring that bank goal right in the slot, but you take that chance, right? So I worry about the Oilers' depth offensively. The Kings are a team that has multiple guys that they can throw out to like shut them down, and then secondary scoring comes in, where I think that the loss of Holloway is really gonna impact the Oilers here. And then of course defensively, Ekholm is the engine of that defense, and I don't think we can overstate the impact that Ekholm has on that team, right? So it just throws everybody's minutes off. And like we've touched on this many times with teams. It's not necessarily about the player, it's about the minutes. In this case, it's about the player and the minutes, because it's going to impact everybody 1 to 6.
Yeah, I've talked about this on the show before too. I think Ekholm is the most important player on that team, not named Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl. So to lose him is just a gut punch to their chances. This is a very different Oilers team, a much less deep Oilers team. Look, I will be the first to admit I like the moves they made this summer. Not the hugest Jeff Skinner guy, but you figure he's going to go over there and just flourish with that, playing with that offensive talent. has not necessarily been the case at all. Victor Arvidsson, I thought he was going to resurrect his career there. A guy who can put the puck in the net, has not been the case at all. They just didn't pan out. That's all it is. Their offseason moves did not pan out. You know, Holloway, Broberg, losing those guys to the offer sheets like they did was another big blow to their depth. This is the year for the Kings. I think this is the year for the Kings, not just to beat the Oilers, but to make a very deep run. I think they're very live in the West. There's plus 750 on FanDuel, even better for them to win the West. There's 16 to 1 available for them to win the Cup. I think they are incredibly live. They're one of the few teams in these playoffs that has 3 lines that you can basically throw out there against anyone and feel comfortable. Like they can throw that Danault, Moore, Fogle line, that third line out there against basically any team, any line in the league, and be like, okay, we're not going to get caved in on these minutes. Obviously, the Byfield line, very, very good. Laferriere has really come into his own. Fiala, obviously on his wing, can provide some offense there too. Kopitar, Kempe, Kuzmenko, really seen Kuzmenko resurrect himself there. He's looked fantastic since going over. I really, really like this Kings team. I like their makeup on the back end. Kemper's been fantastic. I do think they beat the Oilers. I think there's a pathway to them beating them quickly here too. Oilers just feel a little bit cooked. This is another team where like they've had guys that have been missing for so long now. It's hard to just bring everyone back, get that chemistry in. You're going to rely so heavily on the brilliance of McDavid and Draisaitl, which they obviously have. And like we talked about, those guys can easily just come out there, go scorched earth and win this series because they're that good. But like, it is so hard to ask that of them and to go out there and do that with a very, very limited supporting cast. I think they're very ripe for the picking right now. I think the Kings can end this series kind of quickly and go on quite a run here.
I talked with viewer of the show, Ron Kurz, a little bit this morning, and we bet some Darcy Kemper, Conn Smythe. It's 65 to 1 at FanDuel. There are 100 to 1 out there, and I always preach just getting the best number possible. Yeah. But I could, like the Kings home games where they have last chain, I think they set up for really nice underlooks and scenarios where Kemper's making a lot of easy saves, so to speak. You know, not a lot of high danger chances in the slot, stuff like that, where you might see like his save metrics look really, really good when in reality he's not facing like a lot of strong shot quality in those situations. Even this series, I could see a huge flip in dynamic versus in the home road games, right? I could see these being really tight, low scoring games in LA, going to Edmonton and it gets completely different and opens up a lot more. So I think that'll present some value as well. But I think we're kind of reading the same mail here. I mean, I like Kings alternate spreads. As I bet minus 1.5 LA at plus 200. I think that's a great bet.
I agree. I agree. Yeah. Mark in the chat, I've DM'd with Mark quite a bit as well. He likes Kempe, Conn Smythe. I really like that look as well. Another very, very underappreciated player. A lot of underappreciated players on this team, but he is he's an elite finisher, and their offense will flow through him very much so. I do think in this first round series, they're not up yet. FanDuel will be posting like the 1+ goal, 2+ goal, all that sort of stuff for all these series. With this one starting on Monday, it's not quite up yet, but I think we'll look to my guess here, and I think it's pretty a logical guess, is that they'll try and have the Danault lines and the Kopitar lines match up with the McDavid and Draisaitl lines, and that will free up the Byfield Fiala line and Laferriere to really do some damage offensively. I like looking at those three to put up some points in the series and to score some goals. So once those are posted, we'll look for Byfield, Laferriere, and Fiala as well. But yeah, it seems like we're all pretty in alignment here on the Kings. So congrats to the Oilers and Oilers fans for another first round win, I guess. All right, one more series here. We have Florida and Tampa. I'm maybe saving the best one for last, potentially. This is, I mean, just what a gift for the rest of the East, honestly, for the entire playoff field to have these two teams, maybe two of the top 4 or 5 teams in the league, go to war in the first round and knock one of them out at least, and the one that doesn't get knocked out maybe has a chunk taken out of them by the other one. So a gift for the rest of the league here. Lightning minus 102, Panthers minus 118, almost coin flippy here, pretty much everywhere you look. I mean, so many. We've been on this Tampa team quite a bit this year. We've been banging the Tampa drum. Losing Bjorkstrand is a significant blow to them, though. How are you viewing this series coming into it? You think Tampa still? They're very live here, but you think Florida's title defense comes to an end in the first round?
I think it does. And this is not anything against Florida in a sense, because, like, unfortunately for them, their playing Tampa Bay in the first round, right? And I think that Florida beats every other team in the first round this year, but I don't think they beat Tampa Bay in the first round. Tampa Bay is a complete team. We've talked about this all year. When I was mentioning the scoring of my teams, Tampa Bay was the team that actually tied with the Kings in terms of scoring, and they were. It was quite significant once we got past the top four. There's not much else to say about this series except it's going to be tight, and Tampa Bay is going to find a way to win, in my opinion. And in that process, I think the winner of this series is going to be significantly banged up. And if that was the path for the Leafs for me, if I think that the Leafs series is shorter, if this series it's the winner is banged up, that's what opened the door for the Leafs for me. And I think that this is going to be a long, drawn-out series with Tampa Bay getting that last goal.
Yeah,
Roger, nodding in agreement there.
Well, I honestly, I said this earlier. Like anything can happen in the playoff series, and most people think that where there's two evenly matched teams that it's going to go the distance or deep into the series. This one will shock me if it doesn't go deep into the series, because I think these teams are so evenly matched that there's just such even if it does end in a 4 or 5 games, they're going to be 1-goal games. Like it's going to be like when Carolina lost the conference finals to Florida a couple years ago, and the games were just like extremely tight. There's not much separating these two teams. I give a slight edge to Vasilevsky over Bobrovsky in net. I think that's something that Tampa Bay's got going for them. I don't know what the health of Matthew Tkachuk is going to be upon his return. That's just like a big unknown, whether he's at 100% or he's just coming back for the playoffs. There's a lot that plays into this, but Tampa was a team that this year underachieved, like relative to where they finished in the standings. Like you look at their margin of victory over the course of the year, they probably should have had another 10 points, but they had some bad sequencing over the course of the year. They end up where they are now, and the Leafs end up winning the division. Florida, on the other hand, down the stretch, a lot of injuries. They didn't play their best hockey, but the lineup on paper just looks so good when they're at full strength going into the playoffs. So I just don't see much. I have almost no opinion on this series. Like nothing is going to surprise me. I think it has to be kind of priced as a pick'em, where I think Florida is maybe the slightly better team overall with the Bjorkstrand injury, and you give Tampa Bay home ice, and that's where we're at right now. So if I was sending out the odds on this series, it'd be -110 both sides. We're kind of in that range, and it's the best series. I just don't have a strong opinion, and I'll be looking to watch it as a fan.
Yeah, I've been on this Tampa team a lot, and I've been saying for the last month, 2 months, that I think Florida's tired. I think they're a wagon on paper, but I think they're a bit out of steam. Scoring's an issue. I'm skeptical Tkachuk is at or close to 100%. Missing Ekblad for the first 2 games is a big blow. Seth Jones hasn't been able to step up and replace those minutes. Just feels like it's Florida's time to lose one here, and they'll be fine. They'll be back next year with the vengeance. Kind of like Tampa 2 years ago. Going into that series, they lost against the Leafs. Back-to-back years in the Cup final. They were a great team still. They were the better team all series. Samsonov was great. Leafs just stole that one. They got all the bounces you need. Everything has to go right for you to make back-to-back Cup finals like that. And it just sort of comes to an end at one point, and your run is up. And now you look at Tampa, and they're still fine. Obviously, they went through that same thing. It feels like Florida's kind of going through that. And like the closer we get to the playoffs here, the more I'm looking at this, and I'm just like, maybe I'm actually just completely dead wrong here, because maybe Florida is just like, they strike me as such a confident group. And part of me just feels like I'm sleeping on them, and I'm kind of terrified, because like they've been so methodical in how they've gone about resting guys and gearing up for the playoffs. Ekblad's come out and almost like made light of the suspension, feel like my body's never felt better. Like I feel as good as I have in years. Suddenly Maurice comes out, everyone's available for round 1. I don't know. There's just such a like confidence about this group. It feels like they know themselves so well. And maybe they just like might come in here and actually just rip through the East, and we're all just kind of sleeping on them. And like, I don't think anyone will be surprised. Obviously, we're all like picking them as like, oh, this is their time. It's kind of come up, and the time is up for them. But like, no one would obviously be surprised. But I feel like if they actually do come in, and if they look like Florida in game 1 and 2, I think they're going back to the Cup. honestly.
Yeah, I mean, think about like on deadline day, it was just like, well, Florida's going to the Cup again, and now we're here, and where everyone's like questioning them. It could easily happen. Like they are a juggernaut of a team. Bringing in Marchand, like he didn't really have a great regular season coming over and playing for Florida, but he's like another playoff guy that you want to have on your team. They're just kind of like built that way. I will say it is mildly concerning to me how many penalties Florida takes relative to Tampa Bay. And I think that could be a little bit of a hidden edge for the Lightning. Like the Panthers were shorthanded like almost 400 minutes this year. Tampa Bay 335. That's a pretty substantial difference. It's like top of the league versus bottom of the league. So that could be something. If Florida's a little bit undisciplined in this series, it will hurt them. It's just like there's two really, really good teams. And it's really tough.
Yeah.
It's tough for me to find an edge in this series. I've loved Tampa Bay all year, but I'm kind of in your boat, Alex, where it's like maybe we're just really sleeping on Florida at the end of the day. Tough, really tough series for me.
This is one of the few that I really have nothing on. Like I have no real bets here. Game to game, I'm sure I'll be betting it, maybe some live in series stuff. I honestly might even look to, like, if it is just a coin flip series and it does kind of play out that way, live futures on some of these teams, because I do think one of these teams is, depending on how much of a chunk they take out of one another, because they do kind of seem to hate each other. There is a real rivalry brewing there. If they just go to war and like bodies are banged up and everything, then maybe, you have to scale back on that a little bit. But like, it does feel to me, at least from the Florida perspective, if they do win the series, then I was wrong about everything I've said about it being their time up. They're not quite the same team, yada, yada, yada. If they do get by Tampa, I don't think there's anyone in the East that's going to stop this team. I really don't.
Agree.
I think it's Tampa or no one. That's the only team that, in my opinion, can beat Florida. Other teams can beat Tampa, but I don't think anyone else can beat Florida.
So I as a Leafs fan, I will be rooting for Tampa in this series because the Leafs, at least this season and in past years, they've shown the ability that they could play with Tampa. I mean, this year I don't believe the Leafs lost the regular season game to Tampa this year. I could be wrong. Okay, so and then like going back to previous playoff years, they've played Tampa really tight. Like those have got you Leafs play Florida a few years ago. They lose in 5. Granted, probably should have went longer in that series, but whatever. And to me, Florida's been very dominant in the games against the Leafs this year. Even when the Leafs beat Florida, it's been in a manner where the Leafs just got absolutely caved in that game. So, that's me. I'm rooting for the Bolts in this series as a Leafs fan. I agree. I think if Florida wins this series, they're going to run to the Cup, and I don't think there's going to be much stopping them.
Yeah, this is going to be a really fun one to watch. Starts Tuesday, so we're going to really have to wait for this one. Some series are going to be 2 games in by the time we get to game 1 here, but
maybe another hidden edge for the Leafs. Leafs win at 5, and this they get like a week rest or something like that. Who knows? But what the hell is that schedule?
That doesn't make any sense. Tampa just goes out there and wins in 4. Watch, and we're all just so disappointed by how this one plays out. It always feels, we talked about that a bunch. How some of these tight series, they always end up quicker. This is the one that doesn't. The ones we thought that will are actually going to go the distance, and this one's just going to be done very quickly. Watch. But yeah, I'm very, very excited for this one. It doesn't sound like any of us have too much interest in actually betting this series. Guys, we were going to go into like the game 1s on Saturday a little bit, and like some conference futures and some Conn Smythe stuff. I feel like we've kind of touched on all that though throughout our series stuff. Like, I don't know, did you guys have it? I'll throw to each of you. Was there anything else you guys wanted to add here, futures wise, Conn Smythe wise? I feel like we've kind of touched on all that throughout.
Yeah, so Nichushkin is 500 to 1 at FanDuel for Conn Smythe. Listen, he's probably not going to win, but he's priced at 500 to 1, and I would say he wins the Conn Smythe more than 1 out of every 501 times. So that was one that stood out. Like I mentioned, I bet Kemper as well in that market. I bet Josh Morrissey as well in that market. In like the 450 to 1 price range. Those were the guys that stood out to me. And again, these are just flyers. Like literally you could throw $1 on it and have a rooting interest for the playoffs. So those were ones that stood out. I think we talked about how some series would play. It's hard to say without you get your game 1 price, but then it could easily be adjusted for game 2 and things of that nature. I think Montreal, Washington is an over series personally. That's one where I could see it being very open I look to target Kings games at home towards the under. I think Vegas, Minnesota will probably be an under series as well, based off of things. So those are things I'm looking to target. Colorado, Dallas, another over series, I would say.
Yeah, for me, my whole playoffs, and in fact, my future retirement is going to come down to how the Kings do this year. So, yeah, I'm very, very bullish on the Kings across the board.
I think
we all are. We did not plan this, guys. This was this was all very organic. I did not know that we were this aligned on this Kings team. Honestly,
it stems from the first round matchup, right? Because if you think that they have an edge in the first round, their pricing is pretty much going to be off for the majority of the playoffs. I just think Edmonton comes in as like the most overvalued team. Honestly, I can't believe I'm like the Oilers of all teams can make you look like a complete idiot because of their top end talent, but I just don't see it. For the back end is bad, and they don't have the goaltending behind it. I can't see them going through the playoffs winning 6-5 every single game, and especially not against LA. So we're in alignment on the Kings being a bit of a sleeper team here.
Yeah, I think they're catching the Oilers at the right time too. Like if this was the second round and the Oilers had already gotten through a series and won one and gotten some games under their belt, the lineup's back. I think we're having a very different conversation potentially, but just the timing, everything just feels like it's kind of fallen in perfectly here for the Kings this year. And very overdue, because I have liked this Kings team for a long time and they've just run into a juggernaut every year. So it feels like they finally kind of getting a little bit of a break here, and hopefully they can take advantage. Charles says any Saturday or Sunday game one bets or a no-goal parlay. Definitely not a no-goal parlay yet. Not enough markets up at this point. I think we've kind of talked about these games here. Like we'll obviously have a show Monday, but we talked about the over in the Habs Caps game, maybe the under in the Wild Knights game on the Sunday. I don't know if there's anything else you guys had for these first two games. The Avs price has kind of run a little bit now in game one, obviously with the injuries for the Stars, but you're not getting the same number you were like 24 hours ago. Anything else that stands out to you guys before you get out of here?
I will probably lay some heavy juice on Blues team total under in the first game against Winnipeg. I'm struggling to see the Blues have games in this series where they're putting up a lot of goals. I think if the Blues win that series, it is on the backs of Binnington, and they're pulling out like 2-1 type of games.
And it'll be the Jets losing the series more so than anything there.
Exactly. Yeah. The Jets just can't find the back of the net. Power play goes cold, something like of that nature.
Yeah, I agree. I talked about that when we talked about that series. I just don't think the Blues have the offense. They just don't have any depth. They're just far, far, far too reliant on one line. And this is a Jets team that that's the one of the few teams you cannot be reliant on one line against because they will just shut that one line down and force you to beat them another way. And I don't think St. Louis is capable of that. So I appreciate everyone for tuning in today. That was a lot of fun. We broke down a lot of series, gave out a lot of bets. You have to go back and go through it. Maybe you might have missed some, but I enjoyed that one, guys. This should be a fun weekend. A lot of fun games. I'm going to basically shut my family out and just watch hockey. Happy Easter, guys. You won't see me until June. So that's basically what's happening over here. We will be back on Monday, myself and So Money, to break down Monday's games, and we'll react to everything that happened over the course of the weekend. Appreciate everyone for tuning in today. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, all that sort of stuff before you leave. And if you are watching this after the fact, leave a comment. Anything you can do will help us out. But yes, we will be back Monday, 10:30 a.m. Eastern time, as always. Until then, enjoy the games this weekend and good luck on your bets.